you know that grief isn't just sadness? It's an intricate cocktail of emotions that can leave us feeling utterly lost. Welcome to the Tree of Life, Love, and Loss, your go to podcast for understanding healing in the face of adversity. I'm David Lee. I am here to transform your grief into purpose. Each week, we'll unpack heartfelt stories, dive deep into expert insights, and equip you with practical tools to walk the challenging path of loss together. I want you to know that you aren't doing this alone. In our first episode, Understanding Grief, the Invisible Weight, we will break down some of the different types of and stages of grief and recognize how these feelings manifest in our daily lives. Together, we will journey toward healing. I am truly excited to be here with you today. Let me tell you a little bit about myself before we begin. My name is David Lee, and due to the passing of my father when I was 5 years old, led to the exploration of the concept of mortality. I always wondered why people had to pass away. At an early age, I never wanted people to experience the hurt, pain, and the repercussions that I felt after a great loss. I was bullied, I felt lost, unworthy, and confused because people, especially children my age, did not know what I was going through. I also at times felt unloved. Not by my mother, she meant the world to me. Nevertheless, my journey and purpose began a long time ago to assist and help people to understand and find positive ways to offset grief and loss and to live again. Many people have asked me, why is the podcast named The Tree of Life, Love, and Loss? A tree symbolizes in different cultures life, ancestry, the cycle of life and death, strength, growth, wisdom, fruitfulness, nourishment, endurance, shelter, and connection. Once we are born, we experience life. And through life, we learn how to love or experience what people call love. Finally, we lose people and things that are dear to us and that we love. The tree represents, to me, different parts and seasons in our journey called life. And that's why it's called the Tree of Life, Love, and Loss. Before we begin, if you have any questions about grief, please email me at thetreeoflifeloveandloss@gmail.com. It's all one word. That's, again, Tree of Life, Love, A-N-D, loss@gmail.com. And I will try to answer as many questions as I can. So, what is grief? Grief is the natural response we have towards losing someone or something deeply important to us. It's not just about death. It can follow any kind of loss, such as the end of a relationship, loss of health, a job, or even a major life change. At its core, grief is emotional. So there's sadness, anger, guilt, relief, numbness, or even confusion. It is also physical. We can feel fatigue, experience sleep changes, aches, loss of appetite, or difficulty concentrating. Relational changes, feeling disconnected, isolated, or unsure how to interact with others. Grief is also spiritual, and we can question things about our existence. We question meaning, faith, or the why behind what happened. Grief is not something to get over, but something we learn to live with and carry differently over time. It is a sign of love, connection, and the significance of what or who was lost. I like the way author Megan Devine states it from her book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay. We grieve because we loved. One thing that I've learned is that grief is not a one-size-fits-all experience. Grief is like fingerprints. We all grieve differently. No one grieves the same. One reason is because we all experience love differently. For instance, if a person loses their mother, they will grieve her passing away differently from another person who loses their mother as well. It depends on so many factors, like the way they passed away, Was their mother constantly in their life, or how their mother treated them? But the largest is culturally. Author Colin Murray Park states, our reactions are largely shaped by the society in which we live in. He goes on to say, culturally, characteristics of societies affect grief reactions and grief rituals. For instance, some of the ways in which a person passes away are not accepted, so the grief by people or society makes it feel like it's not valid. We will touch upon that a little bit later. Second, there are different types of grief, so let's talk about some of them. First, there's normal or uncomplicated grief. As mentioned before, the natural response to loss, which includes sadness, longing, and adjustment. It usually lessens over time as a person adapts. Most of the people fall into this category. Then there's complicated or prolonged grief. It can be intense. Persistent grief doesn't ease with time and disrupts daily activities. It may involve difficulty accepting the loss or feeling stuck. There are symptoms like disbelief, identity disruption, avoidance of reminders, and an inability to re-engage. Some professionals say that if an individual is still experiencing intense pain for 6 months or more, then they need to seek some form of counseling. Other professionals say that if the intensity lasts for 12 months or more, they need to seek professional help. While I'm here talking about seeking help, did you know that most people in the Black and brown community will not seek help, even though they know that they need help, want help, but will still fail to pursue it? Dr. Kimberly Arnold states, Black Americans are less likely than any other racial ethnic group to seek care because of stigma and systemic barriers. That's something we'll talk about in another episode. Then there's chronic or acute grief. When intense grief lasts a very long time without relief. Unlike complicated grief, it may be less about being stuck and more about ongoing, overwhelming sorrow. For example, someone who lost a spouse 10 years ago still feels deep sadness every day, avoids moving on, and can't vision life without the person, but doesn't necessarily show major disruption in daily life. This can be a very dangerous situation here because although the person is carrying on as if everything is all right, deep inside they could be planning to harm themselves. Someone that I know tried to take their life after 20 years when his son was accidentally killed. Unfortunately, some people are experiencing chronic or acute grief who are listening to this podcast right now. Due to COVID-19, many people are experiencing chronic grief because there was no ritual or homegoing celebration where they did not have a chance to say goodbye or show their respects to the person or person who had passed away. In a recent study, author Martin Easma found that more people suffer from acute grief due to an unexpected loss of a loved one. Moreover, the pandemic also caused cumulative grief. In other words, people will experience a secondary loss or multiple losses even before being able to process the very first one. Many people in this state of being express many different stages of grieving at the same time, which can result in a feeling of, I just can't do this anymore. For instance, an individual can experience the first state of grief, which is denial, according to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who developed the most widely known stages of grief model. It was also expanded on by other experts and professionals, including shock and guilt. However, denial is a natural protective coping mechanism that serves as the mind's initial defense against overwhelming emotions and the shock of loss. In other words, this defense gives an individual time to adjust to the new reality of life without the loved one. While going through denial, an individual can also be going through the second stage of grief, which is anger. Anger is a normal and valid part of the grief process, stemming from pain, powerlessness, or injustice. It's a strong outward emotion that can be directed at the deceased, themselves, others, or circumstances of their loved one's loss, and others who seem to lack understanding. Bargaining, The third stage of grief involves attempting to negotiate with a higher power to reverse the loss or delay the pain or change the outcome. I started to bargain with God before I even dealt with the first step of denial. I was praying that God would heal my mother. Then the anger came, not at God, but because I wanted to spend more time with her. And she said to us all, God is calling her home. I still wanted more time with her. Sometimes we want to be selfish, wanting our loved ones to stay just a little longer. Depression, the fourth stage of grief, is a phase of intense sadness, withdrawal, and despair. Experience the full weight of loss. It can also lead to prolonged grief. Prolonged grief is a diagnosable medical condition that can become disabling if not managed appropriately. And the last stage of grief is acceptance, reaching a new sense of peace and understanding regarding the loss and beginning to move forward with life. That is what everyone listening to the podcast wants and desires, to move forward towards a sense of healing. The first four stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, and depression, help us understand why grief is called the invisible weight. Because its profound impact is internal, a deep pain or internal wound that is not so outwardly apparent to others. Especially when the loss is not socially acceptable, such as suicide, a drug overdose, the death of a pet, or even a miscarriage or infertility. Because the grief of an unborn child or the struggle to conceive is often minimized or invalidated by others, leaving the individual feeling alone. It affects our relationship as well. And thus spiritually, our emotions are like a roller coaster. One minute we are crying, the next minute we want to be hugged, the next moment we want to isolate ourselves. Physically, as mentioned before, we may not be able to sleep, to do our daily activities, or lose our appetite. But sometimes when people are depressed, they like to eat. When it comes to relationships, one can so easily be irritated. Communication breaks down, leading to isolation and emotional distancing. It also can amplify existing conflicts, and even in relationships. Spiritually, it can make one doubt God or lead to apostasy, formal and total abandonment, or renunciation of one's religion. Grief can make us run away from the very help that we need. We can become bitter and think that we can do all things by ourselves. In actuality, we need each other to survive. As you can see, grief plays a significant part of everyday life, if we want it to or not. I see that we have an email about grief. The person asks, can people grieve before someone passes away? What a great question. What Robert is referring to is called anticipatory grief. Many people who experience this, their loved ones are terminally ill or can be diagnosed with something like dementia. During this time, there's a lot of emotional stress, anxiety, depression, withdrawal from social situations, irritability or anger, tearfulness, preoccupation with the person who is ill, and a strong desire to talk about the situation. It reminds me of one of my best friends whose mother had dementia. Some people refer to this as the long goodbye. My friend watched his mother first stop walking, then she stopped eating, and had to be given a feeding tube. Nevertheless, just to converse with his mother and to see her beautiful smile brought him joy. But the hardest thing was when he went to visit his mother and asked her, "Hey, Mom, how are you doing?" And she replied, "Who are you?" He said, "How are you doing today, Mom?" And she replied again, "Who are you?" That broke his heart. I remember him telling me, the day that she forgotten who I was the worst day of my life. He cried all day. He thought that he would be prepared for when she wouldn't remember anything. But he wasn't totally ready. One thing I suggest to people who still have their loved ones is to make a lot of videos and take a lot of pictures. Although this seems logical, many people wish that they would have done so before it's too late. Yes, we grieve before experience loss. I hope that answers your question, Robert. Now we come to one of my favorite segments of the show. This is a part where we further understand why this podcast is called The Tree of Life, Love, and Loss. I have a post-it shaped like a leaf right before me, and I am going to write on it and place it on the tree of life, love, and loss that's behind me. Today, I am going to honor one of my favorite persons. I'm going to honor my mother, and I'm going to write on it right now. Mom, don't you ever forget that I love you. Love always, your son, David. She always said that to each of her 5 children. You are the very first leaf on this tree of honor and memorial. Thank you for all you have done to prepare me for my assignment and purpose. I will never forget you, Mom. And that is it for this episode. Please join us next week when we talk about coping strategies from tears to triumph. This episode offers various positive coping mechanisms, including journaling, art, and community involvement. Experts and real-life stories will provide inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I said, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and share it with your friends. We can't wait to share this journey with you. And one of the things that I will leave you with is that grief is something that we all share. One of the things that I always like to say is that it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a community for an individual to heal. Until next week, be blessed.